Getting set for when disaster strikes, that is the topic of tonight's Byline. Tonight, I want to talk about being prepared. What would you do if a disaster struck your town? Would you be ready? I'm not talking about an asteroid hitting or the oh-so-popular zombie apocalypse that the kids love to speculate about. No, I'm talking about events that are probably a little more realistic. They might be boring, but they're more likely to happen. Last week, the Fraser River in British Columbia hit levels not seen in 40 years. Towns ordered citizens out. Edward Posnikoff, a 72-year-old man, died when the bridge he was standing on collapsed and rushing waters swept him away. Other people were trapped in their homes or communities due to the flooding. So far this year, flooding across Canada hasn't been as bad as last year when large parts of Quebec, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan were underwater. But flooding is always an issue. If it happened in your area, would you be prepared to last a couple of days in your own home? Plenty of Canadians have adopted the just-in-time economy style where products are delivered from factory store to shelf just as they're needed. We're doing that in our own homes. We don't have supplies in our homes anymore to last out a short blackout, never mind a couple of days. That's not wise. You might be thinking you don't live in an area where flooding happens, but what about a blackout? For the last several days, millions across the center of the United States have been without power. The electrical grid is down in parts of Ohio, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., and elsewhere. These aren't remote places. These are major cities suffering through this. Some people have been told they won't have power for a week. What if that happened to you? Most people turn to government when disaster strikes, but let me make a couple of points here. One, if an entire area is flooded and without power, and it's affecting your local government as well, the government workers are being forced out of their homes or they have offices with no power. There's little they can do to help you in the immediate term. Government help might take time to ramp up as well, sometimes a lot of time. Today, I received an email from Victave's Public Safety Department. It read, Harper government announces additional assistance to Manitoba for 2011 spring flooding. That's right, they were announcing payments for last year's flood. In the immediate 72 hours after disaster strikes, could you look after yourself? Do you have food, water, a manual can opener? Do you have a first aid kit? Do you have a way to cook? Do you have cash? I remember the great blackout of 2003. Big chunks of Ontario, Quebec, the eastern United States were without power for days. I was leaving town for a wedding and we were lucky to find the only gas station around that was open. But you could only use cash because bank machines were down. It doesn't take much, but it does take some planning to be prepared. When it all hits the fan, you can be sure someone will be around to help you. But how long will it take for that help to get there? I posted a list of essentials and some links that you should check out at lillyspad.ca. If you don't think disaster can strike where you live, then think again and get prepared. And that's the Byline. Joining me for more on this is our resident preparedness and disaster expert, Kris Sims. Now, Kris, you wrote a piece for the papers a little while ago that talked about what would happen if Yellowstone National Park, which is a volcano, erupted and spewed ash everywhere. That is a major disaster scenario. We're not talking about being prepared for that sort of thing because, let's face it, if you're right near there, including in parts of Canada, there's not much you could do.
No, put your head between your knees and kiss your butt goodbye.
Okay, but you can prepare for a flood or a power blackout or other smaller disasters. What are you recommending are the main things that people get?
We don't usually do this here at Sun News Network, Brian, but I do need to praise the federal government on this one. Their website is actually quite comprehensive when they're telling people what to be prepared for. And we're going to start with the first 72 hours. That means the first 3 days, something's gone wrong. Say your power is out, nothing. You have no electricity, that means no heat. Maybe it depends on where you live. That might be affecting your water as well, or you could be flooded and have to stay in your home, meaning you can't get out. Do you have enough stuff? So, do you have drinking water? The minimal amount that they recommend is to have 2 liters per person per day. So multiply that by the number of people in your household and the number of days you can anticipate being without water.
All right, I think we've got a checklist that we can bring up and then I'll show some information as well. So 2 liters of water per day per person, and I've got this handy dandy little thing. It's from the Red Cross, Canadian Red Cross, and it holds 20 gallons of water. So having something like this handy or immediately as things start to happen, you fill this sort of thing up.
That's right. You can also now order, people have often seen movies where a disaster strikes and the person leans over and fills up the bathtub. That's a good idea, except your bathtub can slowly leak, and also it may not be sanitary after a couple of days. You can now order a very inexpensive bag which fills your entire bathtub, and you've got gallons and gallons of fresh water to use there. So water, food. Do you have enough perishable food? Okay. I brought this in for show and tell. This is an MRE. It's called a meal ready to eat. A good friend of mine gave that to me for my birthday.
We used to eat these when I was in the reserves, and I understand they taste better now and you don't actually need anything to cook. This is an extreme example, but you could simply use canned food,
yes,
right?
You could. Yes, you could. The reason I brought this in is because it's very popular now to buy on websites. It's what the military uses. It has all of your nutritional requirements, and like you said, you don't need to cook it. You can also just get the basics, like you said, canned food. You can get canned ham, canned chicken, ravioli. You know, if you be pretty hard, vegetables. Be pretty hard to make kids eat an MRE, I think. So you got to get something that tastes good. Also, I was noticing the condensed milk is also a good idea as well because it's highly nutritious. It's potable, and also it's hydrating. Sometimes they say you're running low on water. This will also refresh you. It doesn't necessarily have to be water. It can be juice, it can be milk, it can be vegetable juice as well. So there's that, and then there's also a first aid kit. I think those are the basics. Water, food, and a first aid kit for 3 days, and also batteries. Yeah,
well, flashlights. This is one of the things that they recommend, flashlights. This one is actually a wind-up one, so you don't need batteries. You just crank it for a little while, and it's the same as my crank up and solar radio.
Yeah,
this is from my kit, people. Yeah, I've got one of these that we travel with in the car because if you're out in some remote areas, you never know what will happen, say like on the way to Freedom Weekend. But this you don't need any batteries for this one.
Excellent, and I really highly recommend that. A radio is very important because if the government is trying to get your attention, say they have to evacuate your area, say they're coming around with help, they've got food, they've got water, they've got medical supplies, the only way you're going to hear that, your internet is down, you don't have your Sirius XM anymore, you have to turn into your local AM radio and listen to it. So that is really important. Make sure you've got a radio and a way to power it.
During the ice storm in '98, that was the only way that people in certain areas could get any information was through local radio.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of us seem to forget sometimes that our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation, they were natural preppers. I mean, that's a common term nowadays, but they had a pantry full of canned goods. They used to put up pickles, they used to put up peaches, they used to have, you know, their meat that was stored properly. They were able to dry their food, and they kept supplies just in case things went wrong. That could mean, you know, the breadwinner getting thrown out of work. It could mean a flood, could mean a fire, could mean any of these things. It doesn't have to be something dramatic, like you said, the supervolcano or a zombie apocalypse. It's just smart to be able to take care of your own and not have to wait for the government to come help you because you're going to be on your own for at least a good while.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, here's a couple of other things that you can live, and there is a complete, there's a checklist at lillyspad.ca, and there's links to where you can buy these things. There's links to the government site as well. This is a 50-hour candle that you can get along with waterproof matches. You can get these smaller candles as well that can, if they're in the car. This is my emergency car kit, as I said, and that will keep you warm in a car as well. And then, of course, every man's favorite tool, duct tape.
Absolutely. You can use that for a lot of things. As long as you have sanitary cloths, you can use it in a pinch for a bandage. You can use it to keep a lamp up on your wall. Also, if you don't want to use candles, keep in mind we still have oil lamps. You can still get them. Our grandmothers had beautiful ones, I'm sure yours did, in their homes. You can still get emergency ones. They last longer than candles. You don't have that real open flame that you do with a candle because you have the flue on top of it, and it lasts a long time. Or you could just go your plain old your Coleman lantern. You know, bring your camping supplies inside, but I do caution, you know, don't do something silly like use your barbecue inside or to have sort of fumes that are filling your kitchen. But another good thing, make sure you're able to boil water. Say that the water, you've already gone through your supplies that are all in your little Pepsi bottles or something, and you need to sterilize it, you've got to be able to boil it. So that's either having access to a wood stove or a barbecue or even a camp stove if you can.
Some way to be able to do that. All right, some good ideas. Kris Sims, thank you very much.
Thank you.